Hello, and welcome to another episode of Masters of the Forge. It's episode 28 today, and we're doing something new. We're doing a versus episode where we take two forces and put them up against each other and see how much you like the show. I'm Snorre, and with me, the giggling man in the background there, that's
Adam Fesselt, Loopy on the internet, and your friend.
Yep, you are my friend. I know that. Just look at our Adepticon coverage.
Oh, we're such friends, especially in the tub.
That sounds just so wrong. People, try not to get scared.
Or be very scared. Be very, very scared. Bad jokes.
Yes. We've been known to do those. We even got iTunes reviews that say we have horrible humor.
We have proof on the internet. And if it's on the internet, it's true.
Oh, yes. And in this case, it is true. So, Adam, it's been 2 weeks. You've been kind of busy?
Oh, yeah, of course. I did do a bunch of painting. I decided I chickened out. I was going to make my commitment for May to paint my Necron army. And in so doing, since I made the commitment not to paint the Necrons until I assemble the Titans, that meant I would have to assemble the Titans before this month. I chickened out. I did. Instead, I offered up the Kill Blasta as my independent character's hobby progress challenge goal for the month. And this week I painted it up along with 2 mech guns. I actually built and painted the mech guns on Friday. Just both of them just did it. I used the new Secret Weapon Miniatures pigments that we got from Adepticon.
Yeah, I really like that weathering job you did on those. So they look really grimy and dusty.
Yes, thank you very much. They looked great. Thanks to Mr. Justin for that for the lesson, and they look really great.
I have to say that the improvement was big because before you weathered them, they really looked like IKEA wagons.
IKEA!
Come on, seriously. Bright blue and bright yellow.
Yeah. That's my Gretchen color. Everything Gretchen is blue and yellow. Blue is for luck, because all my Gretchen units have blue in them. All my Gretchen-based units that are not just like hordes of Gretchen have like this blue color to them, including my mech guns. And the Kill Blast, you kind of always want to take the Grot Gunners because BS3. So I painted it blue to represent the fact that my Gretchen are manning the weaponry on that tank. It's a really cool model. I love that model. It's really great. It's like one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Orc Super Heavy. So I may even pick up another one. That's how much I like that thing.
Yep, it's the addiction of Forge World.
Yeah. So I did that. The mech guns are a beautiful kit, Snorre. I know they're expensive when compared to kind of what they're representing on the tabletop, but the Orc mech guns are just a beautiful kit, and they have wonderful Gretchen that come with them. You get 4 Gretchen plus 1 kind of Gretchen that's standing on the on like a platform, like looking out. And you could actually put him on a base and use him as another Gretchen. So it really comes with like 5 Gretchen. And they're all awesome, very well designed, and very characterful models, as are the guns themselves. And the mech guns are swappable. So if you buy a mech gun, you're able to use it as any of the mech guns. Any of the new energy-based mech guns. So the custom mega cannon, the tractor cannon, the bubble chukka, all of those. Really a great kit, worth buying. So yesterday, they had a tournament at Dirty Goblin Games. Super fun. I went 2-1. My loss was against Phil and his Deathwing. Deathwing, when you're playing, when you're playing friendly games and stuff, Deathwing are really good. And I really brought 2 elite and army to deal with it. I brought I actually took the Kill Blast and it did a great job during the tournament. Actually, ended up killing a Imperial Knight because he got side shots.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really cool. And the But yeah, it was a really fun tournament up at Dirty Goblin. I took third place. We had a bunch of guys come up. Malahat Mike from the boards, from the independent characters boards, came all the way from Canada to play with us, and Steve from the 13th Legion came from Buffalo to for like a concert and to see some family, and he went to the tournament too. So a lot of cool folks there. Had a wonderful time as always. I'm reading Yark for next episode, and that's a great book. So I talked to Big Jim, and Big Jim is super super busy with his job and loving life. And I decided to ask him if he was interested in me taking over the curation of Killzone, and he agreed. So my thought is that after maybe just a little, I'm going to start working on it, but after the Titans are done, you'll see a 7th edition release for Killzone. I'm going to make that commitment to everyone right now. Now, if you don't know what Killzone is, it's a fan made, and by fan, I mean Big Jim, way of kind of playing a kill team mission, but a lot more flexible. You don't have to take units. You can take individual models, and it's a really fun way to play 40K on a small level.
Yeah, and also you have multiple layers of objectives, and they don't need to be something on the table that you need to take kind of objective. It's about, okay, one guy has to die or one guy has to survive. And it's that kind of, it just makes it a much more enjoyable game compared to a plain straight up just kill everything on the table game.
Yeah, and a lot of people love it, and I actually want my July tournament to be a Killzone tournament up at Flipside Games. So I'm actually gonna kind of try to make it my goal to have that done in time for folks to be able to practice it and make lists and stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it'll be great. I can't wait to try it out. Hopefully we can get a episode with Big Jim. I know he'll want to talk. We kind of owe him.
Yeah, we definitely owe him.
So we should have Big Jim on. He can talk about Protoss and all the work that they're doing, and we'll have a quick chat about Killzone, and he can critique what I come up with. And obviously, Snorre will be working on it too, if you don't mind.
We'll see.
Yeah, maybe you can play test and stuff, or help me come up with some 7th edition adjustments to the rules.
Well, I do attend a club, so I'm pretty sure we can find time to try to test it.
Thanks, buddy. So that leads me to talk about a new Facebook page I created for planning events in my area. A lot of the time I come on the podcast and I talk about all the events that I'm either running or I'm involved in, and I have to go on and on about where to find the information, and it's always different and it's hard to write down and everything like that. So and also I want to kind of bind our community together a little bit more. Right now we're very fractured. So I created a Facebook page called Upstate Honor Guard, and that's going to be everything for every kind of tournament or event, 40K event within a 3-hour drive of Albany, New York. So that'll be Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, obviously New York, and maybe even New Jersey a little bit, upper Pennsylvania, just so that anything that's really within driving distance, people can see what's going on and get updates on the events. So I'm going to take an active role in kind of searching out events and having them posted, because it's really important that the community support each other. So that's really the idea behind that Upstate Honor Guard page. But yeah, I think that's it. That's all I've really been up to as far as 40K is concerned. Just loving life, living it. Thanks. I really appreciate my wife. She's so understanding. She knows I love doing this stuff, and I do my very best to make time. And I think that's an important lesson for anybody. You know, you got to make time for those you love. So even if you are involved in the community, like I'm trying to be, you know, and just always be sure to make time for your loved ones, because that's super important, especially if they're very understanding, like she is.
Yeah. Yep, you do have it
Yeah.
good there.
Oh. So, what are you up to, Snorri?
For me, it's been kind of quiet. I've got some real life things going on at the moment, so they take up a lot of my time, but in a good way. But it's been no games so far there's been no games this period. But I've put some more paint on a couple of Firehawk's drop pods. That's my on and off loyalist marine project.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still reading Yarick Imperial Creed for the next show. So I still have a lot of book to cover because I'm not even halfway through yet. So yeah, I've been slacking a little bit.
Mhm.
But I also talked to Jason and Skew from the Overlords, and I am going to visit them. So if you want to bask in my putrid presence and watch my ugly, nurgly Marines go around the table, then you can go to the Overlord's hut on Sunday, June 14th, and I will be there.
Sweet, dude. I'm so jealous. That's going to be fun.
Well, you have a lot of gaming stores and quite a community around yourself, so you shouldn't be too worried. This is one of my chances to go outside my own club and actually meet people.
Right. No, that's fantastic, dude. That's fantastic. So
yeah,
that's good. I'm glad that you're loving life too. Hey, you got two guys loving life.
Yes. So I think we did a poll, didn't we?
Yes. I want to really thank all the listeners who turned out on the poll to give us their opinion on the show. So we asked the listeners these 4 questions. Which was the best episode of Masters of the Forge in the 2014 to 2015 season? If so, or please explain why it was your favorite. Which was the worst episode of Masters of the Forge in the 2014 to 2015 season? Please explain why it was your least favorite. So,
I guess we should start with the depressing news.
Yeah, let's start with the depressing news.
The episodes that people hated the most were mostly meta-episodes, episodes where we don't really cover rules or fluff or anything, and I can get that. It's not exactly exciting unless you've been there yourself. So when we talked about the Adepticon and Black Library Weekender and the Du Bois GT, it didn't really tickle anyone particularly. So for the people who were at the Adepticon and such, it probably was fun to listen and hear what we felt about the things that they had also experienced. For the other people that weren't there, probably wasn't very exciting.
Yeah, and I think some folks are just not interested in that kind of thing, and they're not. So Snorri and I talked about it, and we're going to compromise. We'll try to make sure to have an episode ready to go and recorded before we go to an event. That way, we'll have a proper fluff-based episode for that episode. However, that's not going to stop us from talking about it in the intro. And for those who don't care for the intro, don't care for hearing about our lives or whatever, I will be placing the timestamps on the show notes so folks can skip the intro if they so desire. And that's people usually put timestamps on. It's just I've been lazy, so I guess I'll just stop being lazy and go ahead and just start doing the timestamps for folks who want to skip the intro and aren't interested in it.
Yeah. So that was the depressing news, and now the good news. And let's have a drum roll for favorite episode of all episodes. Battle of the Fang.
Yeah, well, that wasn't much of a surprise, was it?
Yeah. Our 3 episodes for Battle of the Fang and Space Wolves in general, they were high on the list.
Yes, they were very high on the list. If you count all of them together, it was for like Folka Fenrica, Battle of the Fang Part 1 and Battle of the Fang Part 2 is like more than half of our positive responses were for those.
Yep.
But folks really did seem to like the space travel in the 41st Millennium episode as well. And even Antagonist Part 2, which is episode 2. They liked that one.
Yeah. When it comes to the first episode of the show, the Antagonist Part 1, people didn't like it, but most of the feedback wasn't so much they didn't like what we were doing, but it was the whole chemistry wasn't quite there and technical issues. So
it was our first episode. We're not going to take that to heart.
Exactly. People didn't like parts of the episode that were kind of outside our control because we were new. So that was good news, I think.
Yeah.
And it really shows that book reviews are something that the people like.
They do.
We will keep doing them.
Yes, we absolutely will keep doing book reviews. And miscellaneous fluff episodes, kind of like this one, are also, they're also popular. People seem to like them. The only episodes that didn't get a lot of feedback are Codex to the Tabletop and Homebrew Fluff, but there actually aren't that many episodes, to be honest, of those yet. So there weren't any negatives for those. So like the Star Eagles episodes and
Battlefleet 40K.
Yeah, Folka Fenrica, that kind of stuff, that all worked really well. So we're going to keep on going on with those episode types, and we'll get a little bit more granularity probably in the 2015 to 2016 poll. One thing to note, a lot of folks, the negative reviews, or the ones where they're like, I didn't like this episode, had to do with spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers were some of it, and also this topic doesn't really interest me because I don't play this army.
Yeah.
That was also a common feedback.
Right.
So, yeah, you said some nice things about why the whole spoilers issue before the show.
Yeah, I could do that. You're going to get them. That's all there is to it. So if we do have an episode there was one episode, which was Wolf Brothers. We didn't really say there was going to be that episode doesn't seem like it would have spoilers, and it did. So we'll try to let you know when there's going to be spoilers, but to be perfectly honest, our entire show is a spoiler. So
especially the book review episodes.
Especially the book review episodes. So there's no hope of not being spoiled with our shows. But for random episodes like Wolf Brothers, we'll try to let you know if it's a spoiler for a certain book, in which case that will be. We'll at least try when it comes to that stuff, but the book episodes are just going to be totally. If you don't like spoilers and you haven't read the book, then you should skip that episode for sure.
Yep, so you should probably listen to the intro so you can hear us either rave or hate the book, and then stop.
Yeah, like we said earlier in an earlier episode, thank you so much for listening. You guys, y'all really made this a really special year for us, and I hope we can keep on doing it for quite some time to come. There are a lot of topics to cover. So,
are we ready to be educated?
Oh, let's put on our tutor caps, or our thinking. What are those called? The beanies, the graduation beanie things.
I have no idea. We don't have them here.
Apparently, I have to put on my dunce cap. I'll put on my dunce cap and sit in the corner while Snorre teaches us all about the mentors.
And, of course, we're going to have to give credit where credit is due. This episode idea was actually given to us by one of our listeners.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Masters of the Forge listeners, are you looking to expand your Warhammer 40,000 gaming group?
Do you want to start a 40k club in your area?
Do you want the people you attract to be like-minded mofos?
Do you want to advertise your YouTube channel?
Or even attract more subscribers to your hobby blog or online community?
Then what better way than to advertise on the Masters of the Forge podcast?
All we ask of you is that you email us at mastersoftheforge@gmail.com or message us on Facebook with a full text of your advertisement, including the region in which you live and any contact information people can use to get a hold of you.
We will have one of our many tech servitors read your advertisement on the air. We promise not to make fun of you.
Though we can't always predict the actions of our servitors, you really can't find good help these days.
No, you can't.
The first topic of today's episode will be the mentors.
These guys are cool.
Yeah, I think so. They're kind of strange, though.
Yeah, they're very unique. And I when I was looking over the notes and stuff, I was struck by like some of the interesting ways that GW used to differentiate chapters, and how unique different chapters used to really be. It's really cool.
Yeah, the mentors have been around since I think the Rogue Trader days, but they've never really been explored. They've been referenced in different things, but there's very little known about the chapter, apart from them being like a knowledge collection agency.
I think it's a good example of what we've been taught. What we talked about a few months ago, in that it's one of those little nuggets that GW has left behind in the fluff to give us something to use to kind of develop our own stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that's really cool, and I love these little hidden details.
Yeah. So what we do know about the mentors is that they do follow the Codex Astartes in most ways. You know, they're a chapter of 1,000 Marines divided into 10 companies with squads of 10 and everything. But all these Marines are effectively sergeants, which they call tutors, or higher ranked. And these tutors are often seconded to Astra Militarum forces to aid with anything from tactical analysis to battlefield leadership. And they also observe these forces they are seconded to in order to improve the advice they give to others later.
That is so cool. Like, you could almost see these guys as not like their own Space Marine chapter like codex, but like a special unit in an Astra Militarum codex almost, you know. They're really that's very interesting. They're just kind of like that they go around learning and learning and learning, and then they go around teaching and teaching and teaching, and by teaching they learn, and it's an amazing kind of setup.
Yeah, I think that I really like the whole they're constantly about learning and just raising the level of the Imperium's forces in any way they can in order to give the Imperium a chance to survive.
Yeah. With knowledge comes power.
Oh yes, with these guys, most definitely. Now, with everyone being effectively a sergeant or higher rank, they have this kind of interesting concept where they take turns on being squad leader. So, if they have some kind of challenge in front of them, they might just change, okay, so this guy, so you take over being the leader because you actually have more experience with this than the rest of us. So, they always choose the most appropriate person to lead depending on the situation.
That just makes sense, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, most definitely. And also, if they combat squad into squads of 5, then there's one squad leader per combat squad instead of one sergeant, and then one squad without a sergeant.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I mean, you could argue either way. Like, from a business standpoint, you don't necessarily want the you don't necessarily want the person who's knowledgeable about the topic to be the manager, but when it comes to executing war, you kind of almost might want that, especially if you're Space Marines in a chapter where everyone has the leadership skills to lead, so that's probably fine for them, but it does create a very unique situation.
Yeah, but these tutors, they are the regular Marines, if you can use the word regular about these guys.
Regular Marines, the guys that the guys from D4chan who actually wear camo and like try to use, like, they try to negotiate a peace instead of just purging the heretic and burning the alien.
Yeah, I was thinking more of a regular Marine, as in someone not really combat experienced.
Right, got it.
But they also have what they call the elite cadre. which is a very small group of mentors, exceptionally well trained and equipped, functioning much like the Death Watch kill teams.
These guys are badasses.
Yes. And these guys are performing tasks that are so outside the scope of the normal Marines' duties. They are sent deep within enemy territory to do surgical strikes. And because of this, they are trained to a level that most Marines will never be. And they have the equipment that most Marines will not see for many, many years, if ever. Because the Mechanicum gives these mentors access to equipment that is still being developed, still being refined to see how it performs and what needs to be improved.
Do you think that it's possible that mentors even like attach themselves to like Skitarii forces and stuff?
Could be. I'm not sure.
Could be. Yeah, it could be. I mean, Space Marines do often go to work with Mechanicum just to be Tech Marines in general, and I wonder if the mentors also function as a tutor kind of capacity for them as well. That would be interesting. So they're probably they seems like they would be in bed with a lot of different arms of the Imperium. Like, what about the Sisters of Battle? Maybe they do that too.
Could be.
Like, yeah. Well, I mean, the fluff is so vague that it's, you can surmise that kind of thing for yourself for your own campaign if you want to. But it seems to me that makes sense.
Yeah, it could be. And the elite cadre is also so highly skilled and knowledgeable that they are actually seconded to other Space Marine chapters to do the same job as tutors do for the Astra Militarum.
Yeah, that kind of seals it right there. I mean, I would bet that the other wings of the Imperium, also benefit from the mentors' tutelage.
Yeah, and I would say that because of their knowledge, other Space Marine chapters, generally they wouldn't like other outside chapters to come in and tell them how to do things. But from the description of the mentors and just how knowledgeable they are about warfare, tactics, equipment, and everything, I think these guys would actually be welcome, maybe with a little bit of skepticism, but still, they are the mentors, so they are there for a reason, and I'm pretty sure they are fairly welcome just about any chapter around there, simply because people know that these guys know what they're talking about.
Yeah, Space Marines, except for the ones that are no longer like with us.
Well,
Space Marines are generally very pragmatic, and they don't have bad feelings towards people who know things they don't. But they want to.
I'm kind of skeptical about how the Space Wolves might have reacted. I think they have a pride that is so deep rooted that I don't think they would have welcomed these guys easily.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Yeah, that's true. But I think any smart warrior or anybody really, ignorance leads to failure. And unlike stupidity, ignorance is easily repaired with knowledge. So, anybody who's open to the mentor's tutelage is going to be a better warrior for it.
Yeah. And it goes without saying that the elite cadre are all veteran sergeants of the First Company, because they are the elite of the elite of the elite or something.
Mm-hmm.
And as previously mentioned, the mentors are something of a testbed for Mechanicum inventions, and the elite cadre especially get access to a lot of very high-tech gear. But the mentors pride themselves on knowing everything there is to know about everything, so they also know how to work and probably maintain quite a few relics of the Heresy era too.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Like, I wonder, like, I would say for your own games, just like, just make up whatever you want.
Yeah, if you want an excuse to have a Heresy era tank or something on the table, then, mentors might be the reason why you have it.
Yep.
Now, there isn't much known about what kind of equipment they do have, but there's one chapter relic that is known, and that is Raunfal's Gaze. It's found in the Death Watch RPG books. It's a very special Auspex, named after the chapter master Nisk Ramphal, and it can see through obstacles and has a range that is much greater than a normal Auspex. And we will cover it with some rules later in the show.
Cool. These guys are neat. I wouldn't mind having a small allied contingent of these guys, and I think they really lend themselves to that kind of army build. Just get a small allied contingent of these guys in your army to kind of show your army how to do it.
Yeah.
You know? They have the paint scheme is pretty cool too. It's like this. It's like the center, the body center, and the backpack are like this Dark Angels green with like a bone, the bone chest decoration, and then the rest of the armor is white.
Yeah.
Very cool. It really stands out, which makes and their symbology is red, so that really stands out on the battlefield. And I think they would. That's really important for anybody who's like in charge to be able to be seen.
Yeah, and it's also an excuse to paint a Dark Angels like color scheme, even if you don't want to play the Dark Angels.
Right?
I'd do it. Then again, I'd still have to finish my Firehawks, so I'm busy.
Yeah. Yes, we're all very, very busy.
So we looked a little bit at making some guidelines to make your force feel more like a Mentors chapter, if you want to feel them on the table. And to begin with, since all tutors are special, we had decided that if you want to do a Mentors tactical squad, you have to take a veteran sergeant as your sergeant, because the squad needs to be a little bit more expensive to represent the whole eliteness of this unit. But it also gives you the option to make a combat squad have 2 sergeants. So technically you do get a sergeant slightly cheaper, because the sergeant cost is now included in the unit cost.
Yep. And all the new books anyways have made the sergeant kind of free anyways. So I think that goes along with the way books have been going lately. And that special ability is in addition to whatever chapter tactics you choose. We're not going to dictate a chapter tactics for these guys, but we think that Ultramarines, Raven Guard, Imperial Fist, or White Scars are better suited for the Mentors, particularly Ultramarines, because it offers a lot of battlefield flexibility and it makes sense for the chapter.
Yeah. But since they are so knowledgeable, you can choose whatever you feel is the most appropriate, because that's what the Mentors would do.
Yeah, well, duh.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's use whatever tactic we need to win, because that's smart.
Exactly. And if you want to feel the elite cadre, then you take just a regular veteran sergeant squad.
Yeah.
Like Stern Guard veterans or Vanguard veterans, with the point costs, rules, and gear options that come with it.
Right. Yeah. That makes complete sense, because they just they have everybody's a sergeant, everybody's got their own special weapons and war gear and stuff. It just a regular veteran squad of any variety is Mentors through and through.
We did feel that we should have some kind of chapter tactic that is unique to the Mentors when they are used in an advisory capacity, and we call that the Handed Guides, and we will talk a little bit about it later. We also made a formation that we call the Knife That Cuts, which is used when the elite cadre is sent into battle, because there are some limitations to how we feel they should be fielded.
Yep. Yeah, these guys are freaking awesome, dude. I really appreciate the listener who suggested the idea, because this was fun to learn about. The Mentors are a really neat chapter.
But, they can't be an interesting chapter on their own.
No.
They have to have an enemy.
Yes.
So let's take a break and see who comes up.
All right.
Hey everybody, check out Veterans of the Long War, a Warhammer 40k podcast on iTunes and on Facebook. We are a 40K podcast based out of Western Massachusetts with contributors from other parts of New England. We talk hobby, tactics, news, and rumors, check out new releases, and talk about our local and regional 40K scene. We're looking for new contributors, so get in touch if you want to be a part. Check us out on iTunes and Facebook. That's Veterans of the Long War, a Warhammer 40K podcast.
So the faction that we've chosen to oppose the Mentors are the Eldar from Craftworld Biel-Tan. These Eldar are very interesting in that they don't really fit the mold that I normally would set down for Eldar, and I learned a lot by researching them.
Yeah, they are probably, I would say, the most elitist jerks of the Eldar because they are so heavily into the belief that they are so above everything else in the universe and they should just conquer everything and just whatever. They don't care about anything but the Eldar.
Right, and I guess it comes from a deep trauma, right? That their terrible ethnocentrism comes from the fall of the Eldar, and they truly believe it's almost a very positive outlook, but with a really horrible methodology. They actually believe that this is like the Eldar's winter, like they're in the winter of their race, but winter is always followed by spring, and it's up to them to curate Eldar society until the rise of the Eldar can come again. Even their symbol, which is like a stylized heart in a stylized cup, represents reincarnation.
Yeah, and did anyone say anything about hubris here?
Yeah, I think that's a given with these guys. But yeah, like we were saying, this hopeful outlook is a terribly contrasted by their ruthlessness and militant ethnocentrism. They actually believe, even more than any other Eldar, that no other race is superior to them. They are the superior race in the galaxy, and other races just have no place here. For this reason, all Biel-Tan Eldar start their lives on the path of the warrior, and sometimes they never leave that path. Like, they are all about kicking butt and taking names, and they're out of paper to write names on.
Yeah.
They actually revere Cain as like their avenging god, and they really don't care about much else.
Yeah. It's kind of I think it's pretty interesting that they don't even consider any other path as a good starting point. They all just I'm gonna go for the path of the striking scorpion or the path of the fire dragon. It's all about some kind of warrior path, no matter what.
Yeah, it almost seems like the other paths aren't necessary, and instead it's what path under path of the warrior are you going to follow, not So yeah, they fight with amazing skill because of this, because they're highly trained, and but with no mercy whatsoever. Like we said, other races are animals to them. Worse, they're vermin. Okay, their combat doctrine is called here we go, Bazakain, or Swordwind, which emphasizes bloody surprise assaults, as little Eldar bloodshed as possible, with as much horrific extermination of the enemy as possible.
Yeah. Carnage is their thing.
Right. As I mentioned, their bitterness and their horrible ethics really did begin with the fall of the Eldar. And for a while, they fought alongside Eandon and against Chaos and other races in order to save Eldar society. But they eventually abandoned Eandon, which is really interesting. Like their ethnocentrism doesn't even stop at other species, because Eandon, how they were decimated by the Tyranids of Hive Fleet Kraken. Biel-Tan saw that as a weakness, both from a tactical standpoint and from a sociological standpoint. So they just abandoned them to their fate, which is really crazy.
Yeah.
There's no time for people who can't deliver on the promise to save society, right?
Yeah, and I guess this is one of the reasons why Iyanden is really struggling now, because they had an ally, now they're decimated and they don't have any allies.
Right. Which is interesting because recently the only people they can count on are the Dark Eldar. Right? Like the couple situations where Iyanden were kind of saved by the Dark Eldar. So like right now it would almost seem to the Iyanden that they can't even trust their own people. Well, not that the Dark Eldar aren't, quote, their own people, but another craft world is less likely to help them than the freaking Dark Eldar. So
yeah, and I'm not sure if I wouldn't really count on the Dark Eldar to be a reliable ally.
No, that's true.
Yeah, they show up because they have a mission to achieve, be it kidnapping people or just carnage. But once there's no carnage to be had, they're gone.
Yep. No, that's true. It's just funny, right? So after that, they just kind of plowed through the galaxy, destroying lesser races. But their main focus, they do have they're not just wreaking carnage, right? They actually have a plan and a focus. What they do is they kind of patrol around the galaxy. They have this route that they follow, this ancient route that they follow throughout the galaxy. The craft world is always on the move. Okay, the craft world doesn't like kind of sit and hide out. They're not like the other craft worlds. They're actually always moving, and they're always following this route from Maiden World to Maiden World, Exodite World to Exodite World, and they check up on them. If a Maiden World or Exodite World is untouched, great. But if heaven forbid there is a Xenos race, including mankind, on this world, because they are about to get an ever-living load of whoop ass on them, because that they actually kind of believe that when the spring comes for the Eldar, that the Maiden Worlds and the Exodite Worlds are going to be a staging point for this resurgence of Eldar dominance. So even if, say, the orcs or mankind have completely razed the planet to the ground and like rebuilt it in their own image, as orcs and mankind are wont to do, they will go in and they will try to exterminate every last person or every last being on that world until it has either been restored or flattened. Crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty much a never-ending struggle, because every time the Imperium sends out a probe ship, they will probably find these Maiden Worlds, which are just fantastic places for farming or mining or something, because, untouched and beautiful. Mm-hmm. And of course they're going to settle it, and of course that's going to be a problem later when the Biel-Tan show up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. It's a guaranteed struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there have even been planets that the Imperium has tried to settle, and the Biel-Tan have, wiped them out or defeated them to the point where they can't even bring a ship to exact Exterminatus on that planet because it will just get destroyed by the Biel-Tan before it can happen. So they just put like warning buoys around these worlds and just say, you know what, don't come here. It's fine. Just leave this alone. And it's interesting. It's weird to see one of the few instances where the Imperium just capitulates. That really tells you how vicious the Biel-Tan are in exacting their exterminations. Like, even the Imperium's like, you know what, don't mess with this planet. It's not worth it. So I thought that was really cool. One interesting kind of quick on your tabletop note about the the Biel-Tan is there's an old PDF out there that you can find about the war on Baran. It's an expansion called Epic Swordwind, and it's an epic Armageddon campaign setting. And wow, dude, like the fluff in the beginning of that, like it's mostly fluff, right? And it really goes into all the detail about how the Biel-Tan and the orcs and the Imperium that are involved. I think it's the Raven Guard and the Baran Siege Masters, who were kind of raised up by the which Imperial Guard regiment is it that's famous for their siege tactics?
Don't ask me.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it goes into great detail, and it's a wonderful story, actually. But yeah, Baran was an Exodite world, which was completely taken over by humanity, then attacked and completely taken over by orcs, and it's this whole 3 or 4 way battle between the orcs, the Biel-Tan, the Imperial Guard, and the Raven Guard. Who are based, and actually the Raven Guard contingent is completely exterminated by the by the Biel-Tan. Spoiler alert. It is really great example of how just their fervor at eradicating species who inhabit these worlds are. Like, it is so important to them. They actually raise fallen Eldar against their will to make wraith constructs. Like, normally somebody gives themselves up to do that. No, they actually go to an ancient like Stonehenge like location, raise up the Eldar spirits, and force them to fight as wraith constructs to kill the enemy.
Yeah.
And the ends always justify the means when it comes to the Biel-Tan.
Yep, and it really sounds like they also have a contempt for other Eldar in general, because, they're just tools to facilitate the spring that the Biel-Tan wants.
Right, yeah. The Eldar spring is their own, the ultimate end to their means. So they don't care who they hurt or how they do it. All that matters is the survival of their race. And in a way, you can almost you can sympathize, but personally, I'm not a person who does believe the ends justify the means in most situations. I don't appreciate that kind of thought personally, but it makes for a really cool story.
Yeah. Now, this supplement used to be available from Games Workshop's website, but as we all know, you can't find anything on their website anymore. But I'm pretty sure someone's hoarded it somewhere on the internet.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel bad about downloading it, guys. It's not like they're making money off it, and it's not like it's available anymore. But I would go out and find it and read it, because it is delightful. It even has like little formations in the back and stuff that kind of give you an idea of how to. We didn't come up with any special rules for the Biel-Tan. You'll note when we do our on the tabletop section. But there's a lot of details out there. And not only that, the new Craftworld Eldar book just gives you every opportunity to build your own Biel-Tan army. Like, I was playing with it, and I think it's really cool. Like, you can do like the Guardian Stormhost gives you like 3 units of Storm Guardians. And you can do the aspect hosts. You could just take a bunch of striking scorpions and stuff, and really create a list that just gets in there and gets bloody, And I definitely believe that the best way to represent the Biel-Tan is to just delve into that book and find what you want to represent it.
And I just realized that I have to order this book really soon, because everyone's talking about it. Most people are hating it because they don't play Eldar themselves.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's everything about the Biel-Tan that we can say. Really cool faction. I would really love to build something like this. My buddy Curtis, he had he brought in a bag of like 35 like converted Storm Guardians the other day. He goes, "I'll give it to you real cheap." I'm like, "You son of a gun. Take that away from me." He's like, "Well, I'll hold on to them in case you want to later." I'm like, "Yes, you do that. Hold on to them because I might."
Well, there's one thing that I just realized. We're putting up Mentors against Bealtan.
Mm-hmm.
That might not be the most interesting looking battleground because they're both green and bone.
You're right.
But then again,
very confusing.
Then again, green and bone is a really beautiful color combination.
Mm-hmm. That would actually be really interesting to see. Like, but it'd also be really like I don't know. That's very funny.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't think of it before, but yep.
Yeah, I didn't think of that either. That's funny. All right, so we're gonna take a break, and we're gonna come back with our on the tabletop section.
Interested in the offbeat world of 40K? Is your bits box full of 20-year-old space elves? Have you ever searched for something out of production 40K on eBay? Well, hold on to your zotes and head over to Corsair Radio. It covers the full scope of the hobby, homebrew rules, fluff, campaigns, oddball models, and more. From Terra to the Eye of Terror, visit us at corsairradio.blogspot.com. That's corsairradio.blogspot.com.
It's time to put some models on the table, and let's introduce you to some of the rules that we made.
Yeah. So for the mentors, we made some chapter tactics. The mentors are students of many different combat doctrines, and as such, they may employ any of the following chapter tactics in their battles, chosen at Army List creation: Ultramarines, Raven Guard, Imperial Fists, or White Scars. In addition, any unit which may take a Veteran Sergeant upgrade must do so. Also, you may take an additional Veteran Sergeant, but only if it qualifies to use the Combat Squad Special rule when it deploys. So 10 guys, or 6 for a bike squad, whatever. When deploying, this unit must use the Combat Squad Special rule, however. So that kind of represents when they combat squad for a mission, one of the mentors becomes the sergeant.
And if you decide to use mentors as an ally to Imperial Guard, then we've come up with a Mentors Tutor unit.
Right. This is more than just like a whole group of mentors working as just one combined unit. This is for spreading out throughout like another army.
Yes. So the Mentors Tutor is an elite slot character at 35 points per model. He has Weapon Skill 4, Ballistic Skill 4, Strength 4, Toughness 4, 1 wound, Initiative 4, 2 attacks, Leadership 9, and a Power Armor save of 3+. It is an infantry character, and he has the same special rules, war gear, and upgrades as a normal Space Marine Tactical Squad Veteran Sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
The Mentor's Tutor may also add a Space Marine bike for 25 points, or a jump pack for 15 points.
Yep.
And we have 2 rules that comes with this character. I'm with you to the end. Right after deploying your forces, you must add a Mentor's Tutor to 1 unit. The Mentor's Tutor counts as an original part of that unit for all rules purposes, including victory points. And the other one is Lesson Well Learned. Once per game, the unit to which the tutor is attached may reroll one of the following this player turn: Assault Distance, Leadership, Failed to Hit rolls for shooting or close combat, Failed to Wound rolls for shooting or close combat, or any failed save. This ability may be declared after the initial roll has been made. This is
right.
Simply to represent that the tutor just helps people understand things, slow things down, calm people down, and just make them do their job just a little bit better.
Right, and it's only once per game, and it's only for that one specific type of roll. So it's not like you get it to all of those rolls. It's just you have to pick one of those types of rolls to reroll. So it's a pretty cool ability. It almost reminds me of a chaplain, but a little different. Instead of inspiring zeal in the unit, he's inspiring competence in that unit.
Yeah. We also promised you rules for the new relic, Romthal's Gaze. This Auspex is an incredible feat of engineering, which was acquired from one of the Omega Vaults in the Watch Fortress of Ariok, which is the seat of the Death Watch. It was acquired by their chapter master Nisk Romthal, which is why they call it what they call it. And the story behind this relic is that underneath the Watch Fortress of Ariok, there are several vaults known as the Omega Vaults because there's a huge Omega on the door of every single vault. And these vaults are closed. There's no obvious way of opening them, and people have tried all kinds of things. They just seem to open on their own at a specific time when the need for whatever is inside is at its greatest. So if you're being steamrolled by Eldar, then it might open and show you a relic that is very powerful against Eldar. But for some reason, it doesn't always work like this, because the Tyranids have shown up and decimated quite large sections of space, and there still hasn't shown up any relics relating to Tyranids. And people have tried all kinds of things to try to open these ones, but Romthal just shows up, goes in front of one of the vaults, and the door just opened, and he found this Auspex. So, being a little bit mysterious, these guys being the masters of all kinds of knowledge, maybe he knew exactly what he needed to do to open the door, or maybe it just was the right person at the right time.
That is awesome. What a great story.
Yeah, I really liked it.
It includes so many neat little, like, you learn more than about the relic itself with that story. You learn about the mentors, you learn about the vaults, you learn about, you kind of get a feeling for like how technology and the mysticism of 40K and the Imperium kind of go hand in hand. Like, there had to have been some far-seeing individual who programmed this machine to open, or is it actually like controlled by the Emperor? Who knows?
Yeah, the rumor has it that the Emperor had a hand in building this thing. So him being kind of omniscient, he probably knew that things would be needed at certain times.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? All records
really
are lost.
Cool. That is so neat. So, the black and white of the rules is once per turn, before his unit shoots, the wielder of this relic may nominate one enemy unit to suffer -2 to their cover save when his unit shoots at them. In addition, if you're playing with random objectives or any narrative rules such as mysterious terrain, hidden units, or hidden victory points as objectives, or whatever, the model with this relic may, at the beginning of their player turn, scan one objective or a piece of terrain within 48 inches. Random objectives and mysterious terrain are resolved with a hidden roll and written down to be revealed when appropriate. Hidden units are simply deployed by their owner. So this was a really cool rule, Snorri. I really liked the idea. It was really neat, and I think we didn't put a points level on it. I'm not sure what the points level should be. I'm guessing like 20. 25 or so.
Yeah.
And I think it's just that second part could be worth a lot more depending on whatever campaign you're running. If the campaign kind of calls for a lot of revealing of objectives or whatever, you should probably charge a lot more for the relic.
Yeah. But I would say the base of 20 points is not a bad starting point.
No. Yeah, it's a good start. So we also have a new formation called the Knife That Cuts. Sometimes the time for teaching their allies is over, and the time for teaching the enemy a lesson is at hand. So at these times, the Mentor's elite cadre form a crack team of deadly and experienced warriors in order to perform surgical strikes on key locations against tricky foes. This formation includes 3 or more Mentor's elite cadre, which are represented either by Terminators, Stern Guard, or Vanguard veterans. The veterans should have the drop pod or jump pack upgrades, but not the bike upgrade. Special rules include battlefield insertion. All units must arrive via deep strike reserves. They're coming in hot.
The second rule is you'd only get in the way. Units from this formation are Come the Apocalypse allies with any other detachment or formation which isn't also a Mentor's elite cadre, even other Mentor's forces.
Mm-hmm. I think that's cool. They're like, you know what? No, step back.
Yeah.
We got this.
Not just that, I would actually switch it around and say that the elite cadre wouldn't be deployed in the front lines. From the description of the elite cadre, they would be deployed so far behind enemy lines that there wouldn't really be any other around, simply because they're fighting miles and miles away. You probably can't even hear or see them.
Yeah, you're better off. You're just kind of better off just not having any. But this is like when they're all just themselves, usually.
Yeah, and the last rule is advanced intel. The Mentors player may add a +1 on the roll to go first, and if they need to, they can add +1 to the roll to seize initiative. In addition, units from this formation may arrive from reserves on any turn without rolling, though they must automatically arrive on turn 4 if they have not already. They come in exactly where and when they need to. They can still scatter,
just like a wizard.
Yeah, exactly. So, and if they need to deploy somewhere, then they're coming in, and they don't really have to wait. There's no randomness about when they arrive, but where they arrive might be a little bit more of a tricky thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. This is a fun way to run the Mentors. This is just them, like this is it. You people stay behind. We're just going to take care of things because something needs to be done about this.
And that was all the rules. But we do have a 3-game campaign for you. Not quite finished, because we decided to give you a good first mission to start off with and give you a couple of ideas for how this thing can evolve and let you fill in the blanks. Make it your own.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So this campaign starter is kind of focusing on where the Biel-Tan and the Mentors are right now. The story is that a Biel-Tan scout vessel has advanced ahead of the craft world and found the ancient maiden world called Caridon in the mongrel tongue of the Monkey, overrun by orcs to some extent and humanity. The vermin have filled every crevice on the planet with their filth, poisoning the air and defiling the seas. The craft world sent forth a host to take the world and cleanse it of the interlopers. While the orcs are proving a difficult foe to thwart without incredible losses, the humans are a constant distraction. The Biel-Tan have decided it's too dangerous to fight a war on 2 fronts, and have decided to, for now, focus their attention on the last vestiges of the resistance mankind has dug into the farthest corners of Caridon. Besides, nothing could be worse than the Imperium having some hope of gaining new foothold there.
A small contingent of Mentors have been bolstering the Ultramarines against Wog Snagrod in Ultramar itself, and with the Crimson Fists on Rimsworld. The desperate nature of the situation has led to the arrival of the Lessons of the Vanquished, a Mentors strike cruiser, carrying additional Mentors reinforcements. The Mentors then take it upon themselves to delve brazenly into the Arch-Arsonist's territory, bent on cutting the head off the snake and disrupting the entire Wog from the inside out. The Mentors quickly make their way to the Caridon system in the hopes that they can bolster Imperial forces before it's too late.
Right, and this first mission is focused on them kind of going in and bolstering the Imperial forces and turning them around and starting this foothold. So, although foreign forces such as the Mordian Iron Guard have long since fallen back to Rin's world or have been vanquished, a few pockets of hidden PDF eke out a living where they can. In many cases, they roam listlessly in hopes of finding other guard remnants before the orcs find them. They didn't think they'd encounter something far more terrifying, enraged Biel-Tan. Fortunately, help is on the way. When the Mentors arrive at Caradon, they find Imperial forces in full rout. Much of the world either still in flames or has been infested with greenskins. The Lessons of the Vanquished easily dodges lazy orc weapons fire using the cloud of blackened space hulks for cover. The Mentor's ultimate goal is to carve out a beachhead for further Imperial forces and establish a hard point which can be used as a base from which to plan incursions against the orcs. The Mentor's plan in this battle is to drop into key positions and take control of the situation. They must bolster the ranks of the PDF, fight back, and hold their ground against the Xenos menace.
So, for Imperial forces, the Imperium player should take up to 2,500 points, with at least half being Astra Militarum forces, including at least 2 infantry platoons. In a force-agnostic game, this should be represented by units that are numerous and not fearless. Astra Militarum forces may not include units which must arrive via reserves of any kind. The Eldar may take any organization up to 2,000 points. The battlefield is set up in an equitable way. It is likely that this will be an urban scenario. Players take it in turn, placing 6 tactical objective markers on the table. And for deployment, players pick a short table edge as their table edge, and the Imperium player deploys their army up to 12 inches away from the Eldar table edge.
Yep, and the Eldar are not deployed at all. So for the first turn, you roll off. You do the roll off to determine who goes first, and the game length is the mission is going to use the regular variable mission length, and the victory conditions are very much simply a victory point tally based on the special rules. The primary mission is to achieve as many tactical objectives as possible. So if at the start of the player turn they have fewer than 3 active tactical objectives, they must generate a number of new tactical objectives until they have 3. So it's just like a regular tactical objective mission. The secondary missions are the usual First Bloodline Breaker and Slay the Warlord.
So, the scenario special rules are Night Fighting, Reserves, for Eldar and Mentors only, Mysterious Objectives, and Tactical Objectives. The first special rule that we made for this scenario is Flee for your lives. All Astra Militarum units, even fearless units such as vehicles, begin the game falling back. Astra Militarum units may not use the Combined Squad rule to mob up. The second rule is Into the Fray. All Eldar and Mentor units must begin the game in some kind of reserve or infiltrate. The third rule is Get back into the fight. For each Imperial unit which successfully regrouped on their turn, the Imperial player may discard any one of their tactical objectives for a victory point, regardless of the actual requirements for scoring that objective. And the last one is Exterminate the Vermin. For each Imperial unit which has been destroyed this turn, the Eldar player may discard any one of their tactical objectives for a victory point, regardless of the actual requirements for scoring that objective.
Right on. So it's like a tactical objective scenario, but the main mission really is for the Imperials to regroup and reform and fight back, while the Eldar, all they care about is destroying the vermin on their planet. So I thought those were some cool additions to the scenario.
Seriously, for the Eldar to destroy? You mean exterminate?
Exterminate!
Sorry. Couldn't help myself.
No, that's fine. Yeah, well,
It's Doctor Who.
Good stuff. Good. It's good stuff. So the thing with the 3-game campaigns is that each successive mission really should kind of build on the previous one and what happens in the previous one. That's what's fun about it. You talk with your opponent about it and try to kind of decide what happens next. So it actually makes sense only to kind of provide the first mission here when it comes to very specific details.
So, next couple of scenarios that you would like to run, well, you can do just about anything. Like we said, you can have a talk with your opponent and see where you feel like this campaign is moving. And one of the suggestions I came up with for just a mission that can be put in just about anywhere, not depending on whether Eldar or Imperial Guard win the first battle, for example, you can have a Mentor's Elite Cadre Strike Force being sent into enemy territory to take out the key installation. And this is a scenario where the Eldar can actually enjoy a point superiority, because the Elite Cadre would be sent in as a fairly small number force against possibly heavily defended installation.
Yeah, no, I thought that was a really cool idea for a scenario. I mean, it sounds like it would be right up the Mentor's alley. And like you were saying, like always good to have like a pivotal final battle using a whole lot of points. You could almost do a 3-way battle in this scenario or in this campaign, depending on how far it goes. Really, this is a great idea for a campaign with all three of the factions. But for this first part, it's about the Biel-Tan and the Mentors trying to like thwart each other. The Greenskins are kind of just backdrop for the story.
Yeah.
However, even though they're only backdrop, in the future missions, you might want to use this following special rule to represent them on the tabletop. Greenskin Horde. After deployment, each player takes turns placing any number of 15 strong Orc Boys units with either Choppas or Shootas outside of either deployment zone. At the beginning of each player turn, players roll off for each Boys unit not engaged in close combat. The winner takes control of that unit. The player with the least number of active units on the field enjoys a +1 to this roll. If a Boys unit is engaged in combat, the player opposed to the unit in combat takes control of those orcs. So there's no roll for that. If they're engaged in close combat with a unit, then your opponent runs those orcs.
And, well, if you have a third player who would like to be involved, then maybe you can actually have a Greenskin Horde that's controlled by a third party instead of rolling off.
Mm-hmm. That would be kind of cool. And yeah, this might be a good point after this initial mission. It might be a good idea to pull someone in as almost a GM in order to kind of make it fair. And there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people have orcs, so it shouldn't be a problem. So I thought that would be a neat thing to do to add to the any further scenario that kind of happens in the midst of this world that's infested with orcs.
Yep.
Yeah, so I guess that's all we have to say about, some special rules, and I think we're about ready to close out the show. The Raid on Pikeshi 4, Part 1 of 4. Planetfall. Captain Nedry Blaze hadn't quite gotten used to the acrid odor of the Pikeshi 4 chem fields. The atmospheric scrubbers dotting the region's landscape worked day and night to counter the outgassing of chlorine and other dangerous substances from the world's massive standing pools of waste chemicals. While the air was technically breathable, they did little to negate the smell, and, nevertheless, many of the rank and file wore gas masks, which they were required to purchase with their own meager stipend. They were not provided as standard kit, though, as the need for a mask was negligible if a soldier didn't fall into the solid fog clinging to ground level. For this reason, hazard barriers and lights dotted the landscape amidst the rest of the monolithic machinery necessary for processing and reclaiming the waste materials from the system's hydrochloride operations. Captain Blaze didn't take any chances. He stood atop one of the tallest structures between the city and the vast wastes beyond the reclamation plants. From his vantage point atop the rusted Manufactorum skeleton, he commanded a view of the entire battlefield. It wasn't quite a battlefield yet, but Blaze had seen the picked feeds of the invasion. Xenos had arrived on Pikeshi 4, and probably the last type he'd ever hoped for, orcs. He'd faced the damn things on Shatara when they overwhelmed that world from top to bottom. He'd worried secretly that his new post on Pikeshi 4 might see further action against this insidious foe. He had channeled those annoying worries into productivity. He'd drawn up numerous battle plans and suggested several simple preparations in the event of an Orc invasion. Imperial Commander Falks had seen the wisdom of the preparations, and they had been carried out, including several combat drills. Just this morning, during the briefing before their forces were deployed, the commander had commended him on his foresight. The rest of the captains and corporals shifted uncomfortably when she insinuated that he may be up for a promotion if they were victorious. To his left in the northeast, and to his right in the southwest, vast lakes of liquid chemicals stretched as far as he could see with his magnoculars. The roiling clouds over these lakes were a constant hazard to anyone attempting a crossing. Invasion was unlikely from these vectors. Just the same, his plans called for low air support reserves to patrol the lakes and aid ground forces as needed. However, in 3 places, spokes of dry land radiated from the city, which is where the waste treatment operations were held and also where the likelihood of attack was greatest. He had suggested that they do well to disable the atmospheric scrubbers along the industrial spokes. Commander Falks was a reasonable woman in all, but was reluctant to do so. They knew how to turn the scrubbers off, but it was unclear as to whether they could be turned back on again. So, Captain Blaze held the southern spoke. He did so with a full battery of towed artillery and several hundred brave Pikeshi PDF, although the artillery wouldn't be strong enough to penetrate the tough skin of many of the Orc vehicles. Thankfully, some of the units were armed with tank-breaking weaponry, from the surgical Rapier destroyer batteries to a few dug-in Cyclops drones. More reinforcements were on the way. However, they would not arrive before battle was engaged. In the distance, Blaze could hear the sounds of the approaching rabble. Their engines roared, and they plowed through the pipes and run down the facilities with wild abandon. He could not see the approaching enemy, but Captain Blaze knew their vehicles were fitted with strong rams and dozer blades, which allowed them to all but take the intervening terrain out of the picture. They were direct, but not stupid, at least not in the conventional sense. He'd never tell Commissar Strag that, however, thinking such might be some damnable heresy or another. And where was Strag, anyways? Blaze had heard the man was a local boy born to a minor noble house and cast out on the streets when his mother and father were both killed in action in service to the PDF. After 2 years scraping by, word was he'd been found and befriended by a local priest and shipped off to the Solar Progenium. Now he was back, and he was quite well liked by the rank and file. His bolstering presence would be necessary for the tactics Blaze intended to utilize. As the sounds of screaming Orc war machines grew louder, Blaze began to think he'd have to make do without the Commissar. He muttered in his Vox unit to Corporal Fib, his artillery commander, one of the few men left of his original command.
"Fib,"
he growled,
"begin teaching lessons in the Emperor's justice, if you'd be so kind."
He was immediately enveloped in the glorious drumbeat of heavy mortar fire. Zog knew he'd love this. He knew this would be the best day of his life. It had been a bit of a short life, if he were being honest to himself, which he always was. He'd been on the cruiser Grishnak for a few months. He'd been born there. But he did remember the battles on Shatara just the same. Of course, it wasn't called Shatara, was it? It was now called Tooth Throne. It was quite a good name for the boss's new world, if he was being honest, and he was always honest. After all, it saved time. Sure, he'd fought against other orcs loads of times on the ship. He'd also fought against grots sometimes. Once even fought pink jellies that came in from the swirling colors outside the cruiser's windows. That had been quite fun, but nothing could beat today. He and hundreds of his fellow greenskins rode screaming chariots of rusted steel, belching black soot behind them and crashing through pitiful human habitations. Behind them, Big Mech dreadnoughts' clanking dreads strode through the holes they'd punched. Oh, the exhilaration, the joy! His blood pumped through his body in a rush of excitement and pleasure, mixing to a crescendo of potential energy he could hardly hold back. And then it occurred to him that holding it back was pointless. He roared into the toxic wind, his swinging chain held high, as the truck he rode smashed through another brittle human barrier. Simultaneously, the rest of his mates had joined in his exuberant cry. Then the cacophony began. Artillery shells crashed and exploded in their midst. Flames licked his face, but he and his mob were unharmed. To his left, he saw 2 trucks explode and orcs careen in all directions. Zog and the boys, at the cue of their knob, Boss Blacktooth, readied themselves to launch from the truck when it stopped, so as to use the momentum to throw themselves into the ranks of the enemy. To their surprise, the humans rushed them. They screamed,
For the Emperor!
As they leapt from cover and then slammed into the hulls of the speeding trucks and battle wagons. Although many weedy bodies disappeared under the hungry, ramshackle vehicles, Zog noticed the humans didn't have shooters or choppers in their hands. They had explosives. In moments, he was surrounded by a blistering conflagration. Big Mech Dreadnuts and the rest of his bodyguard tumbled out of the battle wagon when it was halted by the suicidal humans. Some of the boys were pushed directly into the press of enemy bodies and were cut down by flashes of las fire and rugged bayonets. For his part, the Big Mech was not in the mood to wade in against weedy humans today. He pushed to the back of the crazed mob and leapt onto the lower leg of his newest creation, Voltrarch Crump of the Universe. The huge metal monstrosity lurched and swayed as artillery fire and white-hot beams of light glanced off its protective force field. Dreadnuts clambered up into the crew compartment. 3 other mechs were in there operating the machine, while a pair of Burna Boys did their best with the huge Dread's blister of anti-personnel weapons. He called down the periscope and took stock of the battlefield. The boys were leaping from their wagons and trucks to engage the enemy.
Good.
He muttered.
Keep him back.
He then scried the enemy position. On the enemy's left flank, a formidable castle of artillery festooned a largely ruined but sturdy building. This is where the artillery barrage was thudding from, as well as the flashes of heavy laser fire. As much as he wanted to assault that position to silence the guns, Boss Drillteeth, and by proxy Big Mech Dreadnuts himself, had no designs for the eradication of the enemy at the city borders. His only goal at this stage in the war was to push through the outer defenses and dash for their objective within the city itself. The center of the battlefield was filled with infantry, many of them brandishing special weapons he knew were quite deadly to his wagons and dreads. To his left, the enemy's right flank was softer and comprised of a smattering of infantry squads. That side was also shadowed by a hulking building tall enough to provide cover to the dreads and the remaining vehicles as they passed. Dreadnuts unhooked the talker and barked his orders into it.
Boys, look left. Round the big building. Leave them big guns be. We'll get them later.
He twisted a knob and pushed a blue button on the talker's console.
Oi, Fang Squadron. Break off and make you be meatballs for us over here.
Mech Barork responded from his screaming jet.
We's coming, boss!
Commissar Julian Strag knew Pikeshi 4 better than any other military commander. He knew its people, their weaknesses, and their strengths. Before they were deployed, he'd done all he could to bolster the morale of the men and women who would charge into the Orc advance. He thought the captain's plan was a good one, and the courage of the Pikeshi PDF would hold, but there was only so much a small contingent could do to hold off the Orcs. He'd seen intelligence reports from the Orc landing sites. They were loaded for speed, and the space transports had taken off the moment they dropped their cargo. What's more, they'd ignored the rest of the planet. They just wanted this one location, a city which didn't even have an official name. It was simply PLX-47 on the maps. The Orcs weren't invading. They had a specific mission in mind. He'd taken the time to rush over to the makeshift Imperial Command Office in the city center to engage with the commander personally. The conversation was heated. Many preparations had been made for a full invasion, and it had cost them a great deal in time and resources. He understood her reluctance to abandon a strategy which had been long planned for. Strag had all but begged the commander to pull back as many forces to the city's center as possible, to defend whatever key location she could. Whether it was his uncharacteristic, emphatic pleas or her own assessment of the situation, she had agreed. And now Strag was riding within the belly of the only combat vehicle he'd been able to commandeer on short notice, a breaching drill. He'd hand-picked a squad of Pikeshi 4's finest to accompany him, and they'd raced for the front line just as the Orcs were sighted only a few minutes from their company's position. The battle was already raging when they dipped the vehicle's nose down and activated its melta drill. The earth yawned open before them, turning from solid to gas in an instant. They would make it to the battlefield as fast underground as above. Strag hoped it was fast enough to literally undermine whatever forces broke through their defenses. Captain Blaze was pleased with the battle so far. Even without the ministrations of the Commissar, the men and women of Pikeshi IV had proven themselves worthy of the uniforms they wore. They had thrown themselves into the maw of the enemy without fear, and they had all but halted the Orc advance. Casualties were heavy. Many soldiers had been flattened by the rushing vehicles, and many more had been roasted alive by exploding Orc technology. Worse were those without gas masks, who had been knocked prone and were now coughing up their lungs. Still, the center of the battlefield was awash in close combat, and the line held. Better yet, reinforcements began to arrive. A Leman Russ exterminator roared onto the battlefield, spitting a quarter-ton of hot metal at the enemy every 6 seconds. Throne. He'd grown to adore that machine. The exterminator was followed by a single Chimera tank, which he ordered forward into the fray. He allowed himself a moment to take a bigger picture approach to the battle at hand. He scanned the horizon for more Orc reinforcements and saw none. Curious. On a whim, he scanned to the east with his magnoculars. He uttered a foul curse for what he saw there. A massive Orc hydrofoil was whisking across the northeast lake. He couldn't see half the thing because it was obscured by the chlorine mists, but it was easily 60 feet tall and probably twice as long. A swarm of vulture gunships were chasing the monstrosity, trying in vain to topple the thing with their rockets and las cannons. He shook his head. He was helpless to do anything about it. None of the weapons at his disposal had both the range and firepower to damage something like that. He muttered a quiet regret about his chances for promotion and returned his attention to his own battle. Captain Blaze noticed a curious thing. The Orc dreadnoughts and what remained of the bulk of the greenskins were shifting to the west, taking cover behind a large building. On his left flank, a single unit of scrambling, smaller greenskins were struggling with the remnants of the infantry line on that side. But all the other Orcs were bending to the right. The realization of the enemy's plan blossomed into his mind even before the Orc flyers screamed in from the south and laid down a harrowing swarm of bullets into the infantry on his right flank. The Orcs weren't looking for a fight just yet. They were trying to break through. He engaged his Voxcaster once more. Zog wasn't angry. Boss Blacktooth wasn't mad either. These humans were giving a great fight, and the Orcs fighting side by side with him were crowing with glee. When he decapitated the last human in the unit which had assaulted them with a powerful swing of his chain, they laughed in unison, and Blacktooth set to finding more prey. Before he could, though, explosions blossomed around him again. Now that made them mad.
Come and fight, you weedy cowards!
Blacktooth roared before several shards of shrapnel, both manufactured and organic, filled him with deadly holes. And so Zog stood alone. The zeal for combat drained from him, and was instantly replaced with an impulse for self-preservation.
Zoggity,
He muttered.
enemies ain't going nowhere.
He turned on his heels and began to run. To his dismay, a squad of guardsmen burst from cover and began chasing him down, laying down las fire as they did. Zog dove behind a chugging piece of tortured machinery as it choked and died to a swarm of coherent light. He gagged a bit on the heavy, acrid air at ground level, but he immediately picked himself up and kept running. He barely had time to notice Voltsork looming to his right before it opened up with all it had at the squad pursuing him. Several humans were reduced to ash, but the remainder were unaffected by the deaths of their comrades and continued the pursuit. If Zog was being honest with himself, which he always was, he would have said he was scared. Dreadnuts shouted challenges into the talk box. The enormous Dread repeated what he said, but in a massive, booming voice. In his opinion, big fat war bosses were fools of the highest caliber. War bosses could lead, make no mistake, but mechs had cunning. Dreadnuts, in the command chair of the Voltsork, was the strongest and most deadly orc in the sector. No war boss could stand against him when fused with one of his creations. Why, he ruminated, was it that so many warbands were led by such blunt instruments, and not mad boys, like Boss Drillteeth, and great generals like Big Mac Scarhead, or even himself? He was not feeling confident about their chances. His brain worked differently from the common orc. He could see the cause and effect of his actions. He knew they were in dire straits. He gave himself time to wonder if that was why Drillteeth had tapped him for the command of this mission. Perhaps it wasn't his ferocious dreads. Perhaps it was his ability to avoid taking stupid chances. Far off, on the opposite side of the battlefield, the Gretchen and their fool of a runt herd, accompanied by the dumbest mech in his service, charged yet another squad of humans. They were actually not doing all that poorly, but they were serving no purpose. They were acting on instinct. That should give purpose enough, and normally it would, but Boss Drillteeth needed a specific job to be done, and throwing themselves into the enemy artillery would not serve that purpose. Dreadnoughts almost wished they were within range of Voltwork's weapons. Making matters worse, old Greg was lost. The weird boy was supposed to assist him in the location of their ultimate prize. Instead, he'd suffered an inglorious end in the blasted-out ruin they'd been skirting around. A mortar shell had landed directly on him and his unit. Nothing was left of them but random body parts and a blackened pool of gore. No time to lament his misfortune. He directed the Voltwork and the other 2 remaining dreads around the building. The enemy's firebase was directly to his right now, but the enemy was quick to pivot their guns against him, pockmarking the giant dread and ruining one of his big shooters. He was not phased. He ordered the mechs to start working on repairs. Then in front of them, a mass of enemy reserves poured into the battlefield from several ruins to the north. They had advanced up the enemy's right flank behind cover. Now a wall of human flesh and armor-tearing weaponry stood between the orcs and their breakthrough. Dreadnoughts subconsciously calculated the odds. A few units still pushed in from the center and threatened their exposed right flank, so he directed one of his dread bodyguards to engage them. The dread hurled itself into the enemy and wrecked one of their tanks, tearing it open with massive crumping claws. A few desperate guardsmen inside screamed in terror and squeezed the triggers hard on their plasma guns. Bolts of superheated matter blazed through the rent in the tank's hull. One lucky plasma bolt tore into the dread's underbelly as it loomed overhead and penetrated the fuel tank. The explosion was incredible. A pillar of smoke and flame erupted into the pale green sky. Shrapnel plunked off the Voltwork's hull. Dreadnoughts in the Voltwork, accompanied by the last remaining battle wagon and dread, pressed himself towards the infantry standing between them and their objective.
Okay, boys.
He regarded the mechs and Burnaboys in the compartment with a toothy grin. His slugga was drawn in order to punctuate the seriousness of the forthcoming order.
Get out and give me a path of dead unis.
The Commissar began to hear the thud-thud-thud of artillery strikes above them. They were faint at first, but they invariably grew louder. They were on the right course. When he thought the moment was right, Strag ordered the pilot to breach the surface. The magnometer guided their breach away from obstacles, and they pushed through. He all but pushed his men out of the hatch. All was cacophony. Artillery blazed around them. Rapid-fire bullets buzzed overhead. Blasts of crackling energy followed them. He looked up to their source and saw it. A massive, multicolored orc monstrosity of huge proportions. He'd heard of such things before, but he'd never experienced them. He screamed an order to his team, and they released demolitions charges into the behemoth while he tried to score it with his plasma pistol. It didn't even seem to notice them. It strode forward towards the fragile infantry line. Charge! Charge that thing and bring it down! The greenskins are stupid creatures. Are you afraid of the lesser life form so devoid of cunning? Into the fight! He burst forward, and his charges followed him along with the breaching drill, its business end still glowing hotly. They raced towards the beast. As they did so, a small squad of orcs leapt from the front of the thing and charged toward the Pikeshi lines. Promethium flames and white-hot energy blasts annihilated guardsmen and orc alike. There was no time to think of that. The huge dreadnought had to be brought down. As they made contact with it, other Pikeshi infantry charged into a smaller red dreadnought, and also the injured remnants of the squad of orcs clambering out of a burning battle wagon. The bigger dread swung at his team ponderously, but with great effect. Single massive swings with its left arm bludgeoned some of his men to death, while the cluster of spinning blades at the end of it rendered others into piles of sick meat, including the drill's operator. The dread groaned as it killed, and cackled. Yes, the beast did indeed scream a tinny laugh as it tore into his men. Good men. He channeled his rage at this wasteful injustice, and found strength in it. He bounded for the breaching drill in 2 steps and manned the external controls, which allowed the weapon to be guided with precision as a weapon. He barely knew what he was doing, but he pushed the throttle forward and pressed into the dreadnought's leg. The breaching drill began to eat it, melting the metals and cooking off the impurities. His surviving troopers were able to attach a few explosive charges to the beast's other leg. They leapt back. A number of things happened in the 4 seconds the Dread had left in this world. First, Commissar Strag noticed a hatch open up in the crotch of the Dread, and a hulking shape drop out of it. It was a big creature, probably 3 times his size. It was festooned with belts, tools, and pouches. It wore mechanical goggles and had a ponderous pack slung on its back, and it held a curious-looking axe and pistol, which seemed to be decorated with all manner of pointless rusted baubles. The orc saw him and smiled. Smiled! That rather shocked him, but the Commissar wasn't too stunned to raise his plasma pistol. Before he could squeeze a shot off, though, the orc leapt away as the explosives placed by Strag's troopers went off. He tried to leap out of the way as well, and he did avoid the slowly toppling Dread itself, but the shockwave rolling from one side of the Dread to the other caused the molten metal streaming from the monster's leg to vibrate and burst out, splattering Strag with searing clumps of pure pain. In spite of himself, he screamed. He screamed for what seemed like an eternity before the sweet release of unconsciousness took him. Humility was a good lesson for anyone to learn. From his vantage point, Captain Blaze witnessed Commissar Strag learn that lesson well. Unfortunately, he couldn't quite tell whether the lesson was wasted on a dead man or not. No matter. His victory here was complete. Not a single orc had escaped the battlefield, not one. The explosion of the massive war machine heralded the end of all orc attackers on the southern spoke as far as he could tell. Nothing but heaping bodies and burning wreckage remained.
Well done, Pikashi 323rd. The Emperor's light shines upon us. Flamer squads begin purging the Xenos bodies. I want nothing to remain of them but ash.
He then voxed his status to the city center HQ. Corporal Gray replied,
Excellent, Blaze. Now get your damn troopers into the city. We're under attack. Do not wait for further details. If you don't get any, I don't know how much longer the HQ will hold. We need extraction for the commander.
He cursed. The hydrofoil must have gotten through. He said,
Emperor be with you, Corporal. We'll make haste.
Zog ran and ran. He didn't tire easily, but he eventually became aware of the uselessness in continuing to run. He stopped and looked back. No one was pursuing him. In the distance, pillars of smoke rose up. The only sound was the light breeze in his ears and the skittering of large, nasty-tasting insects. The air was difficult to breathe so far away from the human habitats, but he didn't feel as if he was suffocating them. He was glad to have lived to see another fight, and he tried to think of a way he could get back into the fray. These humans were the best he'd ever fought, even though he'd never fought humans before. That sentiment still seemed to have value because, from a certain point of view, he actually had fought humans before, on countless battlefields throughout countless centuries. This specific thought had never really entered his mind, of course. He only knew that he must fight. The urge was too strong to deny. He had to find other orcs. He never sneaked before, and that was the truth. Zog began trotting back whence he came while munching on a dreary supper of Pikashi scorpions. Perhaps the humans would have moved on by the time he passed through. Perhaps he could loot the germinating corpses of his fallen comrades for some better weaponry. He might even pry a few teeth out of their heads. Why not? They wouldn't be using them. Before he'd even taken his 5th step towards the city, his brain began to hurt. So much hurt in the brain was a well-known sensation to him. He'd felt it around Weird Boys countless times. He stopped and grabbed his head and tried not to double over in pain. The air around him seemed to suck away, and he was breathless for a moment. Then, in a puff of ozone, a squeal of tortured reality, and a green flash of light, old Greg stood before him and promptly collapsed. The orc was badly injured. His skin was blackened and peeling. He had at least 3 wounds where the flesh had been cooked off by las bolts. The weird boy groaned, but was not conscious. If Zog didn't lift him up, old Greg would suffocate and die. He struggled with the decision for only a few seconds. Clearly, 2 orcs were better than 1, and that was plain truth. Only a fool couldn't see that, and Zog's survival had proven he was no fool. To celebrate, he decided he'd call himself Scragzog from now on. He picked up the injured weird boy and threw him over his shoulder. Scragzog grinned. Yeah, there was lots more fighting to do yet.
And with that, I think it's time to say farewell to all our listeners for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's time to say goodbye.
I really hope that you've enjoyed the show. We decided to do something different this time, just because, well, we got to try new stuff, see what happens.
Yeah, no, and it's always fun to switch it up and keep it interesting. A lot of the time, there's not a whole lot of fluff involved with a piece of lore, but we still think it's interesting and we want to expose it. So, like a versus episode like this, or maybe even a team up episode, or something where we do two pieces of fluff that are kind of attached to each other, and then do some fun rules based on the fact that they're kind of tied to each other a little bit. So. We'll probably, if you guys like this, we'll probably see more in the future.
And I hope it actually shows that we did look at the results of our poll and we're trying to do something about it.
Yep. So with that, please look at our Facebook page. Please like us there. We put a lot of information there, including the heretofore mentioned poll, Masters of the Forge. Just give it a search on Facebook and you should find it.
We also have a blog at mastersoftheforge.com.
You can twit us in the Twitty space at the Twit space on Twitter, Masters of Forge.
And we also love a review on iTunes because,
yes,
well, it helps show that we do actually exist.
Right. Please check out, if you're in the area or even not, please check out the Albany Exterminatus event in my area on June 6th. You can go to the heretofore also mentioned Upstate Honor Guard site for more info on that. But until then,
play the game
the way you want to.
The music used in this podcast was made by Parad of the duo Sublevel 3. The track is used with his permission. This podcast is protected by the Creative Commons Attribution, No Derivatives, Non-Commercial International License. More information about this license and contact information if you have any requests can be found at our blog, mastersoftheforge.com.